Hey guys, Lanesh Devotee coming back to have a look at the Apoka Warpacks, have a look at what sort of cards they came up with. This time I'm having a look at Breaching the Veil, which has some really nice Flesh Terrors versus Tyranids art on the front there. Okay. So again, they've got a brand new Warlord that they've come up with. And this one is the Parasite of Mortrex. I haven't heard of the Parasite of Mortrex. I was involved in the tabletop game around 2nd edition, 3rd edition, and then I came back for sort of 7th edition quite recently. And the Parasite of Mortrex came up, was introduced and then seems to have sort of faded away while I was gone. The Parasite was a flying creature that seems to have single-handedly implanted an entire planet with Ripper swarms, and destroyed an entire planet by just parasitically taking over all their bodies. So being a flying creature makes sense, and the fact that every time it attacks, it attaches a damaging parasitic effect to what it attacks, or something at the planet where it attacks, makes sense. I get it. I have played it once, and it felt very, very strange. I may just be not used to the style. I mean, maybe I'd feel just as strange playing Zogwart, who I don't really play very often. So I'm not sure about that yet. But that makes sense. Now the idea, it's got a little unique symbol, and the idea of special characters and named characters with the Tyranids is less that they are a particular like hero monster, but more that they are a particular breed that only turned up in a certain area. So the Parasite of Mortrex is a particular breed of monster that the Tyranids deployed on the planet of Mortrex, and it hasn't been seen many other places. Old One-Eye is the name that Imperial soldiers gave to a particularly wounded in the face Carnifex. So it only had one eye, and they went, oh, it's Old One-Eye, that particular monster that keeps coming back and seeming to cause trouble. And that's sort of the idea, these monsters that, it's kind of like how, people living in quite a rural area might have a name for the crocodile in the river, you know what I mean? Like, they imbue it with personality that may not actually be there, and it's like that with the Tyranid characters. Okay, so the army unit for the Parasite is Swarming Rippers. Its story absolutely backs that up. There's Rippers completely destroy the planet, and being hindered by the attachments that the Parasite lays out, and just weakening and further helping the Rippers cause damage makes sense. It really must be pointed out that there's only 2 Swarming Rippers in his signature squad, which kind of feels low if they're meant to be swarming, but it really is fueling the parasitic aspect more than the Ripper aspect, I think. Sweep Attack is the event, and in this case it has 3 shields. Normally the 3 shields would be on the attachment, but because there's multiple attachments for the Parasite, having only one 3 shield card needed to go with the event. And so there's only the one event instead of 2. And basically, you get to do its special attachment when you commit to a planet, and you can do it to something at a nearby planet. It says it's called Sweep Attack for that purpose, but that feels like, I know the scale of the game isn't correct, but a Sweep Attack implies to me that it's swinging wide with its attack. But to an entire other battlefield or planet, it seems quite strange. I'm not sure that Sweep Attack is the right sort of idea represented there. I don't mind it necessarily the effect, but the name is very strange to me. Okay, now all important, the attachments. Basically, they're very much parasitic infection. They're the same thing, pretty much, except that every time they would go away, they just move to another target, and things just keep being infected and reinfected and reinfected. And they've got this interesting thing where, because the Parasite and Sweep Attack will get them into play for free, almost on command, they actually have a cost of 6. So if they end up in your hand, they're not actually very useful there, although you could play them out. So they're an interesting one in that regard. There's 4 of those attachments in the signature squad. It's interesting. I'm not sure what to feel about it. I put it on some elite units, I put it on some smaller units. The termagants, the tokens that it generated, were generally killed pretty quickly, but it did seem to just let everything slowly get weakened, and the more my opponent left things on the battlefield or moved them around, they just kind of sat there, slowly taking more damage. So it was an interesting battle. Finally, they have one support card called Prey on the Weak. And I see what they're going for here, the surrounded Space Marines effect, but it does kind of look more like a Space Marine card than a Tyranid card, I think. I think if more focus on the beasts than the Marines would have been a good idea. But this has 2 separate actions, which is becoming more common. I think some of the Black Crusade cards had a couple of actions and things as well. So it creates an infestation if something dies after being parasited, and that seems reasonable. And then sacrifice a synapse unit to put a synapse unit with a different name into play at your HQ. That, I don't understand why. It's an interesting idea, swapping around the synapses. I have no idea why it should be attached to that support. That support, to me, could even have been 0 cost and just had the interrupt. That would make sense fluff-wise to me, that it's still infesting. The synapse unit, I don't understand why that's there. Potentially could have been an event, well, probably not an event, but a support with like a HQ action. You know, a separate Tyranid card. I'm confused by that one, I'm afraid. I'm not sure how the synapse swapping has to do with the Parasite of Mortrix, so much so that it goes in the signature squad. Alright, but that's the new Warlord there. Quite interesting. Quite interesting. Then we move on to their new Space Marine cards. We have the Steadfast Sword Brethren, a nice 4-cost Black Templar, which is really good for the Neophyte, or whatever it's called. It has Unstoppable, as it should, as a Black Templar. They're quite common. Stats are pretty decent for 4. First time it's assigned damage, it prevents damage, and then another Black Templar gets extra health. Which, I don't know. I'm not sure why. It's a little bit of an effect of sort of stepping forward and taking the fight, taking the blow instead of your comrades, I guess. Which is, yeah, Sword Brethren stepping in to defend his brothers. Yeah, it's alright reasoning. Aerial deployment with some quite cool jetpack art. After both players pass, take an extra deploy turn. I think that's quite a good way of representing the Space Marines always being able to get in just the right position with limited numbers and things. I think that's a pretty good way of doing that. I can picture just at the last moment putting down, like, I don't know, some sort of like a dreadnought suddenly turns up in the wrong place, or they pass early, deploy a lot of things to Planet 1, and then suddenly they put down the Salamander Flamer Squad or the Daring Assault Squad after you thought, actually, I'm safe on this planet to put down all my little weak units, you know? I don't know if it's too powerful. People could tell me if it's too strong an effect, but I think it represents that idea really quite well. Just the one card for the Imperial Guards, Commissar Sommiel. I believe it's a she. I don't know where. It might not be a she. For some reason I thought it was a she. Soldier, officer, commissar. So you could attach a commissarial bolt pistol to this unit. 2 for 2, 1, 2. That makes it automatically a bit better than the other 2 for 2. I think it's a conscript unit, I think. After a transport unit leaves play, put a token into the HQ. I like the use of the transport unit. I'd like to see the transport trait on a few more things. I think a couple of cards that could have had transport don't have it in the fan sets I've seen so far. And I like the idea of tokens being somehow associated to them. So the idea, the wording there, the pilot is dead, get up you dogs, we'll continue our foot, makes sense. We're gonna, if the transport blows up, this commissar forces them to keep going. I think that works pretty well. Good idea, good background to the commissars being so ruthless as they are. Okay, the Elder cards for this pack. We have Wraithbone Armor, which gives extra hit points to some things, in particular units with a printed attack of 0. And then you can exhaust the support to move damage from a unit to move 1 damage from a targeting unit. So you can move damage from an enemy as long as they're at the same planet as a unit with attack of 0. It's very wordy. Adding hit points makes sense for Wraithbone Armor. Wraithbone is the material that craft worlds are made of, that their vehicles are made of, that's why. And it's a psychic material, it's created by their psychers, it's sung into existence, it grows, it's reactive to the environment around it, and so that's why you get the Wraithbone Choir, or Bone Singer Choir or something as the vehicle reducer for the Eldar, because they are growing the vehicles, they're making them work better, having a choir. So Wraithbone Armor giving some extra health, perfectly reasonable. Strong, powerful, sort of semi-psychic armor. Only applying to units with a printed attack of 0. I don't know why. I don't quite understand that. Being a support initially feels a bit weird to me. I feel like it should be an attachment of some sort, but I get the idea that it's trying to say that this is something that your entire army benefits from. Your entire army has the support of better armor, which I guess I can deal with, but it still feels a bit weird. Most other things that are armor in this game have been attachments, and I feel like it should probably have been attachments. I don't know why it's only printed attack of 0. I mean, I get why rules-wise it's meant to provide a very particular sort of boost to particular units, but I really don't like cards that do that and then don't find a way to justify it with fluff. It's just an effect unrelated to what it's called and what it's supposed to be representing. I know Asclepios had a couple of examples of this in the Chime of Eons from the FFG cards, but I can't remember any examples right now. And the combat action, I just simply don't understand. Exhaust the support to move 1 damage from a target enemy unit at a planet with a unit you control with a printed attack of 0. So why are you healing the enemy? How does your armor help the enemy get healed? I don't know, maybe I've got an old version of that card and it's not translated quite right, but I don't understand that card, the Wraithbone Armor. I feel like Wraithbone Armor should do something quite different to what this effect is, and these effects could be linked to some other idea. Okay, the Scheming Warlock. It's a Psyker, reasonable costs for stats, look for a deep strike and keep it. Sure, yeah, I like that. Warlock's definitely looking to the future, looking for helping in battle, particularly with Deep Strike makes sense to me, because Deep Strike represents the sort of the hidden and shadowy and planning ahead side of the Eldar, and so a Warlock would have planned that ahead and helped make sure that that group arrive exactly when they need to, you know, when they burst out of the webway exactly when they need to get involved. So I think that's really cool. That works really well. Okay, the Orcs. We have the Junk Chucker Commando, which is quite neat. Junk Chucker, I like the name. I think that's a pretty orky name. Stats aren't great, however, reduce the cost of attachments you attach to this unit by 1. So that's cool. It gets attachments quite easily. That's good. After it resolves an attack, move an attachment from this unit to an eligible unit, target eligible unit to deal 2 damage. That's great. I think that's really cool. It's throwing stuff at the enemy. It's ridiculous. It's very orky. The only thing is, I have no idea why it's a commando. I don't know why this isn't just called a junk chucker, and with the warrior trait. I don't know why it has to be a commando with the soldier trait. It feels like it's been decided that it would be one, basically because the commandos, the blood axes, are sort of being, or it's clear that they're being lifted up a little beside their idea of them in these packs. But there's nothing particularly blood axey about the idea of throwing your equipment at the enemy to me. Also, I'm not sure who that orc is, but he's clearly a mega knob, which is this giant, overly armoured, powerful orc warrior. And a mega knob to me isn't a commando. A commando is a very specific type of orcs warrior that's trying to fight soldierly rather than warriorly, whereas a mega knob is a giant orc rampaging around in a huge mechanical suit of armour. So if it was just called the junk chucker, I think I'd be good. It's the commando element of that I'm not sure about at all. But I think it's a neat idea. Pain Boy Surgery. This, I think, is a very, very nice orc idea. Target an orc unit, reveal the top card, attach it to the unit if you can, otherwise deal 1 damage, put the card at the bottom, and you just keep going until you either attach something or kill the unit. That's fantastic. That is absolutely what Pain Boy Surgery is. That is the madness of just, let's see what we can do to you, that the orcs live with. Apparently their physiology is so good that you can basically chop off their arm and just jam a piece of rusted metal in, and they'll probably be fine and be able to use it to fight. So Pain Boy Surgery is fantastic. I like that card a lot. It's a very different type of orc deck that you'd have to do. You'd probably want to use a junk chucker with it, because you're going to need a lot of attachments into your deck to be able to use that reliably. You can even target an orc unit you control. You can target your warlord, but they don't have many eligible attachments, so you're probably going to kill your warlord if you do that. But yeah, I really like Pain Boy Surgery. I think that's really good. For Chaos, we have the Champion of Khorne, who has pretty reasonable stat. Oh, he doesn't have a command, so he's got alright stats for 3. He doesn't hit very hard, which isn't that great, but I think a lot of the Khorne themed things don't necessarily hit that hard initially. He has Bloodthirst during combat round in which one or more units have been destroyed at this planet. He gains brutal and immune to enemy events. That's great, especially with his stats. That's a wonderful, wonderful Bloodthirst. So I'm happy with that. For 3, I think I'd possibly use that. And then forced reaction after a battle at an adjacent planet begins, move into the planet. I think that's a really fluffy way of representing Khorne just wanting to be in a battle. And the fact that it's forced means that you've got a chance of luring this bloodthirsty, brutal monster sort of into the wrong position, potentially. You've got to think carefully about where you put him, because if he's at planet 2, and then he has to go fight at planet 1, because there's always a battle there, but you've gone to planet 3, he's not going to be able to jump over and get to you at planet 3, because he'll already have fought at planet 1. So yeah, it's a really interesting one, that one. I think that's really cool. The Neurotic Obliterator. I wasn't sure about the word neurotic. That seems to me to imply anxious, and I don't exactly see an obliterator as neurotic or anxious. But anyway, 3, 1 hammer, 1 5, it's fine. Gets 1 attack and 1 hit point for each attachment on it. That makes sense for the sort of thing obliterators are. They're growing all sorts of weaponry out of themselves, so the more loaded up they are, the bigger and nastier they are. That makes sense. After the unit is chosen as defender, exhaust a weapon to deal damage to the attacker. That is, I like the mechanic of it. It doesn't stop you hurting it, but the more loaded up it is, the more danger it is to fight it. It's going to hurt you when you fight it. But the obliterators are long-ranged gun monstrosity mutations. They're kind of like possessed semi-demons of some sort of machine war god. But there's also mutilators, and they have like chainsaw blades and sickles and scythes and things, and they're up-close carnage versions of the same thing. And I feel like the mutilator would need to be all the same rules, but the reaction would be this. And I feel like the obliterator should have a reaction where you exhaust a weapon attachment to do something more proactive or long-ranged. Possibly to give it to ready it once, or a reaction to the ranged phase in some way, or something like that. Whereas this danger of, if you come in and try and fight me up close, you're going to get hurt, I feel like that's more the mutilator side of things. But it's a neat rule. I like the effect. I'm just not sure if it ties to obliterator as strongly as it would tie to a mutilator. But these are both, I quite like these. I think these are both cool. The arrangement at Elevar 4. Negotiation. Attach unit gains when your opponent wins a command struggle. Good place to make a bargain. So this is the idea that they have somewhere to go to sell things, or they've got good business contacts almost. And I think this is interesting as an idea of an attachment that represents something as nebulous as this. I think it fits in well enough as a rules and things. I think possibly calling it contacts in Elevar 4 or something might have made a stronger connection to the idea of it almost being like this person is a smuggler sort of card. It's an interesting idea to make it work that way. Crude Hounds. I spoke in the last Apoka review video about what Crude Hound is. These ones are fine. No command as usual for Crude. No attachments, which makes sense because they're bestial things. Pretty good stats, really. And after a Crute unit you control damages an enemy unit, exhaust this unit to make it harder. So basically, if you have Crute and Crute Hounds, and the Crute are fighting, the Crute Hounds can bump up that damage. They can fight in with them, they can go on hunting with them, which is fine, which is cool. A bit dangerous though, because it affects all units. It's not limited to non-elite or 2-cost or warlord or anything, it's all units. Or it's not even limited to army unit. So you can affect tokens and all sorts of things. So it's quite a potent one there. Okay, the Dark Eldar cards. An arrogant Homunculus with gorgeous artwork there of a Homunculus moving forward with his abominations. It's a scholar. I love seeing the scholar trait. I don't know if it'll ever do anything, but I love seeing it. It's a 1/1/1/1/1. All good. Increase the cost of other Homunculus at this planet by 1. That's quite cute. I like just by doing that with arrogant, it just gives a lot of character to the card. That's really cool. And it also means you can't put multiple ones at a planet, causing so much forced damage reactions. Forced reaction, after you play a torture, deal damage to a non-warlord at the planet. That's great, so you can use them to ping other Kappas, but you really have to think carefully about what you're going to do with them, because they will kill themselves. If you have no other targets, they must deal a damage to themselves, or you might need to start shielding it, which would be quite frustrating. So you have to think carefully about when you play your torches when you use this. So I initially thought this would be great in Urian, and then I thought, actually, I'm not sure if I want to use it in Urian. The amount of torches I play, I'd almost kill it straight away most of the time. So it's an interesting one. I quite like it. Dark Lance Raider. Okay, so the Raider is a anti-grav. It looks kind of like a ship, but it's an open riding vessel that the Capellites use to travel around rapidly and perform their raids, and the Dark Lance is the heavy weapon that they use to incapacitate their enemies and attack them. So Dark Lance technology is hand-wavy sci-fi magic, but it basically is an anti-tank weapon that I think it strips away molecular levels or uses some sort of Eldar warp technology to damage what it's hitting, and it's very, very good at destroying solid set pieces. So this is interesting. So they gave it 0 attack, whereas I would have said a Dark Lance is quite a solid hitter. It has flying, which works with some of the other Raider style vehicles we've seen, the Ravager and things, flying, so that's fine. But then it's been given 0 attack, but instead of having printed attack, after you declare it as an attacker, you can affect 2 different units or more heavily affect 1. And that's an interesting idea. I don't know if Dark Lance is what I would have expected to do that. I think they have another weapon called a blaster or something that can potentially affect an area or be narrowly focused. And I think maybe that would have been represented better by that sort of an effect rather than a Dark Lance. But it's a neat effect. It's an interesting way of breaking up the way the units interact. Optimized protocol for the Necrons. You bring in a unit from your discard pile, so that could be a Decaying Warrior Squad or an Anrakia, or possibly even other cards as we come to see them. I think the Dread Monolith puts them into play from the discard pile, doesn't it? So that could work that way. Put another target Necron unit, print a cost 3 or lower from the discard pile, so you can just add to whatever's coming in, which is pretty impressive. And the last card of this pack is a neutral card. I'm glad to see that they kept going with the neutral cards. Counterblow. When your Warlord is chosen as defender, deal 1 unpreventable damage to the attacker. If he's exhausted, draw a card. So this basically just encourages you to get your Warlord stuck in, and it gives them a bit of a, not quite defense, but a way to punish somebody who takes advantage of your Warlord having actually got involved in the fight. I think it's quite good for Ragnar, the Parasite. Who else gets involved in the fight quite easily? Basil, potentially, I guess, maybe? I'm not sure. No, probably not Basil, because he sucks the damage off. But yeah, it could be quite an interesting one. You know, it's very interesting. So I think that's quite a neat idea of the counter blow, the you hit me, but I'm still swinging at you. So I think that one's a cool card too. Overall, Breaching the Veil made me a little less excited than Promise of War. Promise of War I thought was quite a lot of interesting ideas. Breaching the Veil had a few more ideas that made me go, I'm not sure if that fits. But I'm quite looking forward to giving them a try on Octagon. So, I have printed them off. I've used makeplayingcards.com to print off my own copies of these cards. They've come out really, really well. And so I'm hoping I'll take them into my local gaming store and see if anyone wants to go. But there's me, one other person who'll play me if I turn up, and then about 6 people who used to play and don't really anymore. So we'll see if they end up playing with these cards with me or not. Alright, so I hope you found that interesting. I'd love to hear what you think of the cards, and see you later.